Hey, welcome back to the Cruise Elite podcast. Tony, what's going on?
So I actually had a question for you. Congratulations on the move, by the way.
Thank you.
You're in the new place right now, right?
In the new place.
New living room.
Yeah, just the place is shiny, new everything. It's quite an upgrade. We're loving it so far.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram, I saw pictures of your view. I don't know if that's outside of the house or from the window, but it's just like beautiful mountain sunset, like trees and...
It is legit, dude. That is our view from basically, the living room and then also the kitchen. So we've been enjoying we've only been here, I want to say like 5 or 6 nights.
Mm-hmm. And
the first few nights we had like beautiful sunsets and it was awesome.
Man, that's so great.
Yeah,
that's so
much better. Like our old place was like a cave. I mean, so it is a huge upgrade, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So you also put a picture up of your new gym setup.
Yep.
Which, you've got your squat rack, you've got kettlebells, you've got Indian clubs. Like they're all
half gym. Living room is half gym, half living room. That's how we got it done.
That's awesome.
Which is cool. It's fine with us.
Yeah, in between sets, you can just watch some TV, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Our TV right now, it's funny you said that. So we haven't had a TV set up in 6 years. But we have a TV, but it was under the bed. And once in a great while, we'd take it out. We did like a movie night, with the family kind of thing.
Yeah.
But my daughter doesn't even know what TV is for the most part. But right now, the TV is on top of the TV stand. And we keep looking at it because the old place we had, it just really wasn't set up in a way that we could do it, with a nice TV stand and everything. And, at one point we were just like, well, who needs a TV anyways? If we're watching something, it might be on our laptop. Most of what we are doing is on our laptop. So our TV ended up under the bed. But now it's on the TV stand. And because we have space for the TV stand, but it's unplugged. And so we just are staring at this thing and we're like, are we ever going to plug this thing in? I'm not sure yet. So it's
kind of a big
to be
decision,
continued.
Right?
Yeah, it's a big decision to be continued. I mean, we try to limit obviously our own screen time, which is kind of a joke. I mean, it's like, I'd like to think I limit my screen time. I don't. I just limit my time watching TV because we don't watch any. But we're trying to do that for our daughter anyway and limit that as best we can. So, to be continued. I don't know if that TV is going to get plugged in. It might just be a movie night thing once in a while. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the squat rack, you also had what looked like a balance board.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've talked about it much. Maybe my memory is like that of a goldfish, but I'm really curious about like how often you use the balance board and like what you're doing with the balance board.
Yeah, the balance board. So technically that balance board was supposed to be for my daughter. We got it for her for Christmas, not this last Christmas, the one before. And it's a lot of fun. It's not something we use a ton. It's just one of those things. And you know how like a 4-year-old is. Like my daughter will want to practice something and that means it's going to be about 2 to 3 minutes of practice, before another idea comes up in her mind. So we might bust that thing out for a few minutes and play on it and stuff. And sometimes I just walk over and stand on it just for fun. So it's not something we're using a ton, but it's fun. When it's one of those things where like sometimes when you walk by it, you're just like, I got to stand on this thing, right? And play around a little bit. It's one of those... It's kind of a different style than what most people think of with a balance board. It rather than being like a board that you put on top of like a roller, the way this one is that it's basically has, if you can picture like half of a ball underneath it, and it's attached to the board. And the reason is
2 directions of play, you've got 360 degrees.
Exactly. And you can actually spin on it too, which is really cool. And so obviously when I was watching YouTube videos on this thing, I'm like, this is going to be incredible. I'm going to spin on this thing. It is hard. Like balancing on it, I've got no problem. I grew up skateboarding. I've got that sense really dialed still, which is cool. But like actually spinning on it is really tricky. But yeah, it's not a training tool for me per se. It's just like a fun thing,
Yeah.
and you have to do it on on either a rug or a rubber floor, which is why it's over there on the rubber floor that we have.
Otherwise, it's
It'll slip.
too unwieldy.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's fun, and one time I actually did incorporate it into my workouts or workout, and rather than standing on it, I did push-ups on it.
Okay.
That was really kind of cool because it allows you to spin, you can change the position of your upper body. And of course, you have to stabilize it at the same time. So that was kind of cool.
So for the listeners that can't see, you were kind of doing like a 90-degree elbow versus like a tucked in elbow.
Yeah,
for your push-up.
it's kind of out maybe 45, but I can actually pivot the board on that half dome underneath it. So I can get out of the conventional position, which I like to do with everything. I like to get out of the conventional position and explore unconventional positions. And so you can do that with it, and it's pretty fun that way. But what's really interesting about a balance board? So people think, oh, a balance board is good for developing your balance. It's really not that good for developing your balance.
Yeah, I remember you saying something like this previously, which is part of why I wanted to ask.
It's
also.
not that. So it is balance. Obviously, our listeners have heard us talk about balance a lot now through the lens of the vestibular system, because that is our main sense for balance. Well, interestingly enough, when you stand on an unstable surface, such as a balance board, what happens is your body moves underneath your head, but your head stays on the center line. If you can imagine, the same thing would happen when you're on a slack line. Any kind of unstable surface, your body's working underneath your head, but your head does not move through space. And so the significance of this is really interesting to think about, because that means that technically something like a balance board will actually down-regulate a lot of the vestibular signaling, because your vestibular system is sensing movement through accelerations of head and neck motion. So listen to that again. Accelerations of head and neck motion. When I stand on a balance board, my head becomes stable, as does my neck, for the most part. There's some work going on at the neck, actually, but it's different than being able to rotate your head side to side, or tilt side to side, or extend or flex. The head is stable now, so you don't get as much canal activation because your canals are activated by the accelerations. So this is where it gets really interesting, because as a balance tool, in my mind, it's more of a proprioceptive tool versus a balance tool, because anything that I put under the umbrella of balance as a training quality, I cannot separate it from the vestibular system.
Correct.
I just can't do it, because how can we? It's like you have a built-in compass called your vestibular system that helps you understand your orientation to gravity, which way you're going, which way is up, and it senses these different head and neck motions. So I look at it as more of a proprioceptive tool, because your joints are doing a lot. Your joints are doing a lot. Your feet, your ankles, your knees, your hips, some parts of your spine, and that's significant.
Yeah, I always feel like my abs really fire when I'm
very
on
reflexively,
instability kind of surfaces.
Yeah, totally. So it just, when you look at the balance board through a neuro lens, it's interesting. It's like, well, okay, I don't really look at it as balance. Does it have training value? It might. The verdict is out on that. There's so many different opinions. As a coach, I want everything that I do with somebody to be as specific to how that person is going to use their body as possible. Okay, so the average person I work with is not going to be doing anything similar to standing on an unstable surface. Maybe sometimes you go for a hike, you step on some rocks, some loose rocks, the ground moves. You're walking on the beach, the ground moves a little bit. There's some instances in life, maybe if you're paddle boarding, those types of things. So I'm not going to say it doesn't have any relevance, but really I'm most interested in helping someone develop their balance on stable ground, because guess what? That's what they're on most of the time. And if their balance is lousy, you want to be working towards something a bit more specific for the person. So it kind of depends on the individual. Yeah, there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. For me, it's like, well, it doesn't hurt us, and I like having fun, and it's a really fun tool. And I grew up on boards, snowboarding, skateboarding, and I do think that had value for me, especially from a proprioceptive standpoint.
Yeah. I do wonder if there's a kind of semantic thing going on here, because it sounds like what you're talking about is like, does it activate the vestibular system
Right.
with those head accelerations, right? Like,
Right.
are the ear canals moving? Like, is the fluid in your ear reacting? But if to give it the benefit of the doubt, right? If you're on a balance board and you're using your proprioceptive system to keep your head stable, I'd imagine there's like micro movements that the vestibular system it's communicating with, right? Like to keep your
Yes.
head stable.
Exactly. Your vestibular system is helping to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I almost imagine it like kind of like an isometric hold for a muscle. Like instead of like extending, contracting, and expanding,
Totally.
it's like we're gonna stay right here. But there's still I wonder if there's still like a vestibular benefit there.
Yes, I do too. That's a good point, because that is happening. It's not like your vestibular system goes offline,
Yeah.
and isn't working for you, because your vestibular system is firing at rest, So, and there is some reflexive activity happening in the neck. I mean, there is a specific reflex that does become active when you are stimulating the spinal cord that way, right? So it's not like, okay, there's no vestibular activity. I guess the down regulation part is going to be more related to the semicircular canals. You're just not going to get as much canal activation because your head is kind of locked in space because your body's moving underneath it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, for me, it's like when it comes to training, I've always come from a place of exposure and options. Like getting exposure to as many different things as possible to build your options. I mean, for me, that's what's key. So sometimes the unstable surface stuff gets a really, there's a lot of people that really rag on it. It's not necessary. Like, I stand on the balance board because it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's not doing me harm, right? It's not where I would choose to spend the majority of my time trying to improve my balance and my stability. But I think some exposure to stuff like that is good, right? It gives you more options.
Yeah. I do find it very fun though. Well, I don't have a balance board, but I've got a little foam roller.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'll just see it lying on the floor after I've like used it or something, and I'll just stand on it and just kind of move around.
Yeah.
There is something really engaging about.
There totally is. So you made me think of a client experience too that was kind of interesting, because early on, when I was getting into learning more neuro, I was picking up on the vibe from that crowd. They basically didn't really like unstable surface training at all. And I had a client experience where unstable surface training was actually the highest payoff thing for us at the time.
Really?
Yeah. And that was really mind blowing, because I was kind of battling through, the experience, trying to sift through it and find the truth. And I was working with a challenging client who had a lot of midline stability issues and needed some form of like reflexive work to get her core reflexively working for her. And it was hard to find anything that would do that the way that we wanted to. And she was a little bit fragile, I guess I would say, that perturbing her, which literally means like bumping into her, like using my hand to bump her, because that's actually a really useful training tool for eliciting some of these reflexes for reflexive stabilization. She's a little fragile for that. And so we ended up doing some interesting unstable training stuff. And it actually started just sitting on a physio ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I was able to kind of control the environment and even spot her.
Mm-hmm.
And getting those responses in her trunk where she would start to feel the ball roll and then she had to correct ended up being extremely high payoff for her. And that's kind of
That's
when I was
cool.
like, you know what? Guess what I'm learning here? It's all situational, right? It's all situational. You can't really say anything is bad necessarily. It's just a tool.
Yeah. Remind me where the reflexive impulses tend to originate in the brain.
Well, so in this scenario, I think at the time I was thinking more about what we call a VSR, which is a vestibulospinal reflex.
Okay.
That is certainly not the only reflex for core stabilization, but that's one we're really interested in. And one of the best ways to elicit that is by perturbing people or creating, instability underneath them that they have to correct.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like how we started the conversation with like, I use it for fun, and then we found an
Yes.
example where you use it to really help a client.
Yeah.
And I feel like what I'm learning is to keep a really open mind on these things.
Yeah, seriously.
Because there's stuff that works that you wouldn't expect. You have been posting about Alicia's back.
Yeah.
And she's been going through some back problems, and you've been doing some really interesting stuff to help with that.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about that for
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to dig into that because it actually came up in conversation within our community, our students in our courses, and it was a really good opportunity to share with our newest students what we mean about using threat reduction to deal with an acute pain episode. And so I think it's great for our listeners to hear this because the main thing that's missing, like when I think about everything as a whole and our students, our members, all the people DMing me every day, can you help me with this? What's your opinion on that? It always brings me back to you have to understand how this process works if you want to get out of pain. And this is where people are lost because they don't know what to expect and they cannot predict what it's going to be like and they don't have a process to go through. And so I thought it would be cool to share this process because this is a real life thing, right? It's like, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that can relate to this, but basically what has happened is a month leading up to our move, Alisha had some building back tension and we were just crazy busy and she didn't have time to do much about it. In fact, the two of us haven't worked out in a long, like we haven't done a good workout in like a month and a half. Like life has been crazy. Yeah. Like we just bailed. It's like, fine. I know I'm coming back to it. In fact, I'm going to force myself to do like even a 10-minute workout today just to like start. I literally haven't done anything. And so she had building back tension leading up to our move and we were busy running around doing the things we had to do. And she didn't really have time to do much about it. Kind of, did what we all do at some point. You kind of ignore it and hope something good happens.
Mm-hmm.
But then, the big move day comes. We had some friends helping us and Alisha was messing with, can you guess? The mattress. like the dreaded mattress. Like, come on. They are ridiculous. Just so awkward, right?
Yep.
So she's already got, the tension and stuff. And she, of course, after this was like, I can't believe of all the things that I was messing with. I was lifting the mattress. So anyway, she's doing some stuff with the mattress. I think she was trying to put a mattress cover on the mattress so that we could move it, not have to worry about getting our somewhat nice new mattress dirty. And she tweaked her back. Okay. And she was basically out for the count. So for the rest of the day, all she could literally do is stand there, and kind of watch over our daughter as, some of our friends helped me move the big items and stuff. And she was in rough shape.
Mm.
So she got through that day, but the next morning, which was last Monday, was brutal. So she was basically bedridden, couldn't get out of bed, super disappointed because it's like the first day in our place.
Yeah.
She's like, she's got the emotions going because she wants to she's excited to start unpacking, but she can't move.
Yeah.
Oh, it was brutal. So that's how it started, right? She literally could not get out of bed to even walk. And so, here's the important, this is important for people to hear. So what does everybody do in that scenario? Well, your mind starts going wild, right? Because you're like, what kind of damage did I do?
Yeah.
And literally, Alisha was like, oh man, I don't know. This feels like a compression injury. I hope it's not a disc. Like all that stuff is going through your head. And that's because the severity of pain, when we're experiencing it, we just automatically assume the severity of the pain equals the severity of the issue. That's just an assumption you make in the moment, but it's not actually true, which is really interesting about pain. The severity of pain does not equal the severity of the actual issue, at least all the time. Okay. So Monday was a bust. Threw in the towel. Couldn't really do much. She tinkered around with a few possible high-payoff drills, but really just couldn't get a lot done. I think she did manage to find that as she finally got herself out of bed, she found her first high-payoff drill, which was a reverse hyperextension. And it was kind of a modified version where you kind of lie belly down on a physio ball. Your hands are on the floor. And then you bend your knees for this particular version. So there's not a ton of, a ton of leverage going into your lower back. And all you do is simply lift your legs. And you don't lift them that far, right? It's we're talking 6-inch range of motion for her on day one. But being in that position and getting some spinal extension took some pressure off her back. And that was her first high payoff drill that she discovered. So then the next day, right, she started utilizing the high payoff drills. Now, if our listeners are new to this process of what we call threat reduction, when you are in an acute phase of an injury, the key is to keep reducing perceived threat. And so that's why the assess-reassess process is so critical. Because guess what? You don't know what's threatening and what's not threatening unless you assess it.
Right.
So Alisha was using some gentle forward flexion, but then also just kind of walking to tell her better, same, or worse. And so that's how she started the process. And so once you locate even one high payoff drill, the goal now is to repeat that as frequently as possible to keep reducing perceived threat.
Right.
And so what we've
but not so many times that you go over and it becomes threatening.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's key, because what we've experienced over the years with ourselves and helping people is that your brain and nervous system typically like frequency but low volume when you are in this phase. And so what that means is it could be one drill that's helping you, and you're going to repeat that drill. In Alisha's case, she repeated her hyperextensions, her reverse hypers, every 20 minutes. She would do a set. That would alleviate a little bit of tension, reduce threat a little bit. And yes, it did build back up because she was in a very threatened state. But she kept checking in with the drill. Kind of her way of saying, all right, brain, chill out, calm down, I'm safe. Let's start this process. And so lots of frequency, probably only 5-10 reps at a time, maybe 2 sets, chill out, 20 minutes again. And that is the process that she's been using ever since, but she's been collecting more high payoff drills in the process. So the reverse hypers were really good. And that eventually led her to finding some isometrics that were useful. We call them contralateral isometrics. If you can imagine, she was in a standing position and she was using our cable pulley machine.
Mm-hmm.
And she would pull on the cable. So this was with her upper body, and she was in like a lunge stance with her opposite leg forward. And she would literally just hold the gentle isometric with her upper body. And that was her drill. And so now she had reverse hypers, and she would follow up with this isometric. Gentle isometrics are a really useful threat reduction tool because it's the least threatening form of strength training. So it's they can be really good in this scenario. And so then she was practicing those two things.
So if you don't mind,
Yeah.
let's rewind for a second, because I'm very interested in why she's choosing these drills.
Mm-hmm.
Also want to comment that this is why you set up your home gym first when you move.
Oh, gosh.
Then you have it
good
already. But yeah, like for example, the reverse hyper, like I know that a lot of people use that specifically for back pain, but like why? Like
so,
why are you guys thinking that as step one?
So number one, I actually had experience with that 2 years ago when I hurt my back. The reverse hypers were quite useful in kind of, catapulting me forward a little bit, leading me to other things. So number one experience was like, hey, this has been useful in the past. Let's try it again. The thought, so this is interesting. A lot of times with compression-based spine issues, disc problems, nerve root issues, we need to find ways to take pressure off of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And most of what we do, especially in life, but also in a gym context, are they're closed chain movements, meaning you're grounded when you do them. If you can think about both feet are on the ground when you do a hip hinge, maybe like a RDL or something. A reverse hyper is the same mechanics as an RDL. But we've taken, if you take the person mentally, if you take the person, you just flip them, right? Basically flip them almost upside down. You're still doing an RDL, but it's different because now your feet are no longer grounded. So it's an open chain movement. It's a very, very different stimulus for the spinal cord. And in some cases, it's good for taking pressure off of the spinal cord, as well as getting some direct, muscular activation to the low back without some larger muscle groups doing a ton. Your hamstrings, your glutes are still involved in a reverse hyper, but it's very specific to the extensors of the spine.
So is it possible that it's less threatening because you're not loading the spine with all of your body? You're just using the erectors for that bottom portion?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, one of the ways I kind of experienced it when I was doing them is that because you're not standing up, your relationship to gravity is going to be completely different. And therefore the tone that you're carrying is quite different. And maybe you don't have as much of that stabilization tone that you might when you're standing, which in some cases makes drills assess poorly when you're in an acute phase.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the stability you need just for standing on two legs is kind of working against you. And so sometimes we need to offload ourselves against gravity, change our position. When we make things open chain, we reduce some of that tension around the spine even more. And now we're able to, use the movement to direct some input right into that area, as well as positionally, like mechanically. There's at least quite a bit of evidence that the mechanical nature of the drill is possibly taking pressure off of discs.
Right.
Maybe. And this might be different for each person, but I think there's a lot of evidence there.
Yeah.
So it can be quite useful.
visually in my mind, it makes sense. Like just seeing
Yeah.
the lower back kind of curve that way.
Hmm.
It's like the opposite of how it might when you've got the weight coming down on the spine.
Totally. Yeah.
So I wonder if this is like a positive example of the table effect.
Oh, yes. So that's a good thought. Yeah, the table dilemma. So,
Table dilemma. There you go.
yeah. And for our listeners, if you haven't heard about this yet, we've talked about it a few times in past episodes. Table dilemma basically represents this problem that we sometimes run into where the unspecific nature of doing things in a horizontal position, like unloaded on a table or on the floor, may not transfer as well to a standing position as we want. And one of the things that we often see, especially with like different forms of manual therapy and exercise, is that you might get a result in a horizontal position, but then as soon as you're back in a vertical position, as your other senses integrate with walking, right, like your visual sense and your vestibular sense, muscle tone then changes so drastically that we literally walk off the results that we just had. It's frustrating. So, yeah, so this is an example of how that might work in our favor because we're purposely changing the position to something that might be purposely offloading additional tension.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to work in a way without that tension from standing kind of hindering the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is an example of that. Now, it also is an example of a non-specific position because ultimately, what does Alisha want to be able to do? She wants to be able to function on two legs, walking around the house, doing the chores, unpacking boxes. And a reverse hyper may not be specific to that necessarily because everything she's going to be doing is not open chain.
Yeah.
And so this may be one of those examples where we're using it to create at least a short-term window of temporary relief. How much of it transfers? I don't know. But it creates an opportunity that might buy Alisha X amount of steps with less pain.
Yeah.
And eventually that leads her to the next high payoff drill.
Which I noticed is closed chain because
Yes,
she's standing and doing an isometric hold with a cable now. So we're
exactly.
transferring to a more specific.
Yeah, we're starting to get there. And actually, I should rewind a tad because before we even got to the contralateral isometrics, she actually was finding that she needed to do some, call them wall supported lumbar circles. So she actually had her back up against the wall, her knees bent. She's leaning into the wall a little bit for some support. Now, this is closed chain. And she's doing a half lumbar circle where the intent is to actually move your lumbar spine through whatever range of motion you can pain free. And so she immediately was already moving the part of her body that was causing, her pain.
Mm-hmm.
But she was doing it in a way that was focused and it had intent and she wasn't pushing into ranges of motion that hurt. And it was also kind of an indicator of like, okay, how much progress are we making here? Because we need to be able to flex our spine. And she was very flexion intolerant at the time, which is very common when you have a back episode like that. So she started with some gentle lumbar work against the wall. And then we started sprinkling in some neuro tools right away to try to reduce threat with the idea of moving her lumbar spine. And the most impactful stimulus right away was sound. So we started playing sound in her right ear. And that immediately started changing muscle tone a bit. And she was able to now actually do the lumbar circle with a little bit more range of motion and less discomfort. And so that was her drill. After she did some reverse hypers, she stood up, she leaned against the wall. She did several repetitions of lumbar half circles, but she was playing music in her right ear the whole time.
Yeah. So the lumbar half circles, it's another way of like supporting the spine, but giving it the opportunity to move.
Yes. Yeah. The wall supported part of it, I think, probably gives the nervous system just a sense of stability.
Yeah.
It also will offload some tension that you might not want to work against. And it's kind of neat. This particular version of it where you're leaning against a wall allows you to get a bit more length through the spine because your pelvis is anchored against the wall, which feels really good, and it often
Mhm.
can be really useful. So yeah, that was a useful drill for her. She actually had to start, rather than doing a half circle, she had to start with what we call lines, where she was just practicing going into lateral flexion and coming out. And then she was going into forward flexion and coming out
Mhm.
rather than doing the half circle.
Mhm.
So we talk a lot about the complexity of the shape in our courses, especially when we train the cerebellum. And we often say, with training the cerebellum, we like complex nonlinear movements because it activates strong cerebellar load, but also activates the most mechanoreception, which are, mechanical nerve endings that get excited from actual mechanical movements, different kinds
Mhm.
of movement. So we have what's called the shapes continuum, which starts with a dot, which is an isometric, and then progresses to a line, which is a linear movement that
Mhm.
eventually, if you can imagine then a semicircle, a full circle, a figure eight, and then
Mhm.
different variations of the figure eight. So thinking about the shapes continuum, she actually had to start really low on the shapes continuum. So at this point now she's doing isometrics and she's doing lines. These things are less threatening for the brain. Then we started using the additional neuro work, right, with sound stimulus. That eventually got her to a point where she could start to produce that half circle,
Mhm.
which is cool. So now we're starting to increase the complexity of what she's doing.
And walk us through why we're introducing sound to her right ear.
Yeah. So we tested both, right? That's the thing with sound. It's an interesting one. It's kind of split 60-40. A lot of that stimulation when you put sound in the right ear is going to be directed at the right side of the brainstem. But then the rest of that stimulus is going to be directed towards the opposite cortex. So you can get some very different responses based on which ear you put the sound in. You don't have any other neuro assessments to go off of. You just simply test both and see what works.
Mhm.
And in a scenario where you're trying to be fast, sometimes that's the quickest way to do it. So with her though, we kind of already know stuff about her neurology,
Right.
right? And we know that she does quite well with right-sided PMRF is what we say, right-sided PMRF activation, which is brainstem. So we tried that first, and that was useful right away. She used her lumbar movement as her reassessment because the goal was let's improve this lumbar movement. So let's use it as the assessment. Sound immediately improved it. So okay, boom, we've got a nice neurostimulus now that we can use to reduce threat and encourage better movement.
Does she just pick a playlist that she likes?
Yeah, she just brought something up on
Yeah.
Spotify. Yeah, and she was just playing music. Yep, and you can do that. You can. She's just been kind of quick about it. She's just been holding the speaker of her
Mhm.
phone up to her ear and kind of covering the other ear. But you can use earbuds, and that can be quite useful. And in some scenarios, we would even put an earplug in the other ear.
Okay, so now
Yeah,
we're magnifying the
yeah,
difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And sometimes it's just not necessary. She's getting a result, so she just stuck with doing it that way.
Yeah.
So reverse hypers now. We've got the wall supported lumbar work. We've added in the sound stimulus. And so at this point, things are starting to move in the right direction. She's walking around the house a lot better. Her pain has decreased a lot. She doesn't get so wrecked from sitting because that was what was happening is she would get herself to a place where she was functioning pretty well. And then she would sit and sitting would trash her. She'd stand
Mhm.
up. It was like back to square one. She'd have to go do her drills again. That's just the nature of this process where you can't give up. You have to keep doing your high payoff drills. Keep reducing threat. People, they just want to bail out when they sit down and something happens and they feel like they've had a setback.
Mhm.
Those setbacks are just part of it. You just have to keep doing your drills. And, that's what she's been doing. So, now she's got those contralateral isometrics with the cable going as well. Now here's where it gets really interesting. So she's got at this point, a couple days later, she's still not going on walks, right? It's still like pretty sensitive. And we needed another powerful, addition to these stacks that we were creating. And so I was like, you know what? We already know you're doing well with, a very asymmetric approach right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try some hemi-field glasses. And for our listeners, if you guys have listened to, I believe it was our last episode on inhibition tools, I talked about making homemade hemi-field glasses, which are really, really wacky. So you take any pair of glasses, preferably clear, but we didn't have clear. We had colored lenses. First, what we did is we tested Alicia's response to the different colors, because that is a really great tool too. So she put on blue glasses, she retested her range of motion, red glasses, green glasses, yellow glasses. She did not get any kind of big result from any of the colors, but yellow, she said, felt calming to her.
Mm-hmm.
So we went with yellow. And so what we did is I took black electrical tape and I blocked out 50% of each lens. And I did it in a way where I was either blocking out the inside of the lens. So I blocked out the inside of the lens on the left lens. I blocked out 50% of the inside. Right lens, I blocked out 50% of the outside.
Yeah.
And that's
so
what
it's either the right side of both eyes or the left side of both eyes.
Yep, exactly. And that the reason is because the way the visual streams work is kind of a brain teaser when you look at the diagram. It has to do it has to do with the visual field in the part of the retina that correlates to the specific part of the visual field. And when you know those fields and you block out two of them, two sides, you can direct all of the light information coming in towards one side of the cortex.
Mm-hmm.
And that's whichever side you want to activate. So for Alisha, we actually wanted to activate her right cortex. So we built hemi fields to do that. And it was crazy. So she put these hemi fields on, and it takes a couple minutes to kind of acclimate to them, because oddly enough, I mean, your visual system is so amazing at compensating, but you put these on and it's like, whoa, this is really annoying. And then the longer you have them on, you're like, oh, actually, I can still do whatever I need to do with these on, even though these parts of the visual field are blocked out. And what that is doing, and often does, is really drastically changes muscle tone, because your cortex plays a big role in controlling muscle tone,
mm-hmm.
along with the PMRF ipsilaterally. And so she's wearing the glasses and is noticing improvements in range of motion, improvements in walking. And so now what we have her doing is wearing the hemifield glasses while she's doing all her other drills. So now when she does reverse hypers, hemifields are on. She does her wall-supported lumbar work, hemifields are on. She's doing her isometrics, hemifields are on. She's even wearing the hemifields when we go outside and go for walks,
mm-hmm.
or she might even wear them for a few minutes around the house. It's generally a tool where you would wear them for several minutes at a time and then maybe take them off to take a couple minutes of a break and then put them back on. And that is a passive stimulus. That, what I mean by passive is you apply it, you don't need to do anything,
mm-hmm.
and it is doing something for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by passive. And now we have a really powerful passive tool that she can just wear that we know is doing something to help her function and decrease her pain, which is huge to have a tool like that. Because then you can add it to everything else that she's doing, and now you have a stronger stimulus. So once again, we're now reducing even more threat. And this was the biggest leap forward for her at this point.
So when you're assessing with the hemifields, everything's better.
Everything.
And how about sitting? Like, is she able to sit in the...
Yeah, so at this point, after using the hemifields for like a half day, she started realizing there was less of a price paid for sitting.
Yeah.
She's able to get up, readjust a little faster, walking's a little bit better. So once we got the hemifields going, now we started resuming our family walks. We're able to get out there, walk. She's still a little apprehensive, but she's doing it. We have a crazy steep hill here with a lot of loose gravel. So a little bit like she's just a little apprehensive, but she's starting to be okay with it. And so the hemifields were huge. Like that jumped her forward a lot. And so she was really working on that now as part of her drill stack. Now, at this point, yeah, we're out walking. So remember back to Monday, no steps other than a couple out of bed here and there. Now we're at a point several days later where she told me she looked at her phone and stuff and it said she had like 6,000 steps. So she's moving around.
Yeah.
She's getting chores done. She's unpacking boxes. We're getting out for a quick family walk. Things are moving in the right direction. So we needed something else. And kind of thinking about it, this is where history comes into play. She was like, you know what? I bet we need to like look at my abdominal scar because she had a C-section. It's like, yep, that's a heavy hitter. Any scar, any large scar, especially on the midline, they just matter, right? They're blurry spots on the map, especially with low back pain. I mean, it's very common for low back pain episodes in women to happen, to women that have had C-sections. In fact, when I posted this on Instagram, I got a bunch of DMs from women who were like, hey, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing. I've struggled with back pain for X amount of years and I've had 2-3 C-sections. Is that connected? I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we live in a world where, well, number one, it's a tangent. I'm not going to get on it really. But number one, I can't believe we live in a world where a C-section is like presented to you as the best option before like, I mean, we're talking, this is before like complications, it's like, oh, this is the best option. It's the most time efficient one and you'll be fine. Like cutting through every layer of your abdominal tissue does not make you fine. I mean, that's a very serious surgery that's very hard to recover from. And then the other part of that story is, guess what? There is no rehab for it unless you go and find it yourself. So you're just sent on your way. C-section scars are a big deal. And you have to check them. And so what we did with Alisha is we directional tested. So I directional tested her scar while she was standing up. This is where the table dilemma again comes up because when you do tissue work and you assess tissue, sometimes the findings while laying down are drastically different than the findings when standing up. It's really interesting. So I directional tested her scar while standing up. What that means is I put my hand on the scar, and if you can think about all the cardinal positions of a compass, okay, north, south, you get the idea. I've got some angles in there, northeast, that kind of thing. And what you do is you just kind of apply a little pressure to the scar, and then you traction the skin in those directions. And what you're doing is you are assessing the end feel of the tissue. So skin stretches, right? So you stretch the skin, and then when tissue is healthy, you get to the end range of the skin, and it would feel springy, right? Like it's just is very pliable and springy. When you stretch tissue to its end range and you run into what we call a barrier, there is no additional springiness to that tissue. It's an abrupt stop. And so we're identifying what we call a barrier, which in this case would be related to her scar tissue. Okay, and it's interesting because you can have different results with finding these barriers based on the different layers of tissue. So you can be kind of like superficial, where you're not applying a lot of pressure, and we test that. And then you can be a little deeper, like think about like maybe a 1/2 inch of pressure into the tissue, where now you're dragging the tissue in those same directions, and you might find different stuff in those deeper layers of connective tissue. So that's what we did. And we found that her scar wanted to very specifically be pulled down into her right. So a downward right angle. That's where we felt the most restriction.
How easy is it to tell the difference?
Honestly, it's too easy.
Really?
With a little practice. It really blows my mind because, I mean, this particular form of manual assessment, probably compared to other things that people know how to do, I'm not a manual therapist, but I know a lot of manual techniques that I've been taught. And this is pretty darn easy. Yes, it does take practice, but with some practice, you can actually get really good at this really fast.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so I'm pulling the tissue down. I'm like, okay, there's the barrier. Let's retest. So with the barrier pulled down into her right, now we're checking ranges of motion. I kind of held it there for a little bit. She just took a few breaths, breathing. And then I took my hand off. She retested with some hip flexion. That was better. Okay, good. We found the direction that your tissue wants to go. This is very important. Well, what can we do with this? If we were relying on my manual skills, we'd have to say, okay, now I have to.
You got to rub your belly every
I got to do
minutes.
this every 20 minutes. Jeez. Okay. So there's a better way. So we took kinesio tape. And the piece of kinesio tape was, it was a pretty small piece. It's the length of my hand. Kinesio tape's what? 1.5 inches wide, 2 inches. So took a single piece of kinesio tape, put it over the scar, and then I kind of had her set up. Remember, she's standing now. So I had her kind of put her body into a similar position that would traction the skin in a similar way. So right leg back, a little bit of like spinal extension. Put the anchor of the kinesio tape kind of near, right just above the scar. Now with my hand at the same time, I am pulling her skin in that direction that we found, and I'm putting about 25-30% stretch on the kinesio tape as I just gently lay down the tape. And then we rub the tape and it sticks to the skin. One piece. That's it. And now we have another passive stimulus doing what we know her nervous system wants, but happening 24/7, even more so than the hemifield glasses. So, little retest after that, pretty good, walking good, better hip flexion. We actually had to go somewhere, I think, if I remember correctly. We hopped in the car. I think we were still at a point where our kitchen wasn't like set up, so we drove down the road to some food trucks near us. We got lunch, and like a couple hours into this, like an hour and a half, I guess, we're both, all of a sudden it hit us. We're like, whoa, you're moving even better. Like there was moments there, like she wasn't thinking about her movement. And that's when you're starting to make a big impact. When you don't have to be so deliberate with every step or, stabilizing yourself as you sit down or get up.
That's such an exciting moment when you realize like, oh shit, I haven't been thinking about my injury for however long.
Yeah. Those are the results that matter the most, because that means reflexively things are starting to work better and you don't need as much of your conscious mind dedicated to trying to like keep you safe. So that's huge. So the tape on the abdomen was enormous. That was a huge leap in the right direction. And now when she's doing her exercises every 20 minutes or so, the tape is on, right? The hemifields are on. The sound stimulus is going, and she's going through her exercises. She's got, 3 of them at this point.
So that's like a quadruple stack.
Oh yeah, things are getting nerdy.
Exercise that she's doing, plus the kinesio tape, plus the hemifield, plus the audio stimulus.
That's right,
asymmetrical audio stimulus.
Yeah, and that's what we mean by stacking.
That's advanced.
Yeah,
that is
that's
some advanced applied neurology.
Yeah, and it's so cool when you find all that stuff and you put it together like that, and you just watch the impact it can have. And so now she's doing all the drills. Things go headed in a really good direction, much faster for the next, I want to say 2 days. And that kind of brings us to where we are right now. So yesterday, Alisha was like, all right, I feel like my body's ready to progress to like more gentle strength training and doing things a bit more specific. So still has her tape on, still has her hemifields going, but now what she's done is she's progressed into more gait-specific types of contralateral movement,
Mm-hmm.
where we love the cable pulling machine for this,
Mm-hmm.
but you can imagine like what looks like a step forward and sort of a punch, where you're like rotating, you're punching, you're really extending through that arm, split stance, looks very athletic, rotating the spine, protracting the shoulder. And then also the reverse of that, which would be a backward step while pulling on the cable with your opposite arm.
Interesting. Yeah.
So both contralateral style movements that mimic gait patterning, which is really very important for the spine. And ultimately, most important for Alisha to get back the ability to walk without any issue. So yeah, she started doing those yesterday, and things are going really good.
So didn't increase threat. She's
Nope.
able to do it at the dosage she's got.
Exactly. Yeah. And so she's still doing her high payoff drills. She still has like three things that she's relying on to keep reducing threat, but now she's integrated in the strength training a little bit. And yeah, that's where we are now. And so we've already been on a walk today. She's walking much better. Kind of arm swing is back. Sitting is not destroying her like it was before. Pain is way down, and now she's just explaining it as tension. And she's like, yeah, I just really got to keep working on this tension that I feel in my hips. And she does those strength drills, and a lot of that tension comes out. And yeah, she's just moving forward. So, this is how it works in real life. It's not, hey, play sound in your ear and let's fix everything all at once.
Yeah.
Like it's not really that. Like people, if our listeners are just starting to learn about this neuro stuff, and you're seeing what I'm doing in short form content on Instagram, hey, try this sound stimulus, try this funky face exercise with your tongue or your jaw or whatever, your vision exercise. Like all those things are wonderful. And yes, there will be many times where something like that, one single stimulus, fixes something entirely.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff happens all the time. I don't know how. I don't know what's happening. I have theory that we're following, but for whatever reason, the novelty of the stimulus, the person really needed it. Their brain was in need of that. We've clarified a blurry map spot. Boom. You're functioning again. Your pain is gone. Happens all the time. But realistically, with something like a low back episode, this is kind of the process, right? It's not just one drill takes care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's understanding what we mean by reducing threat and going through this threat reduction phase, which what is needed is the assess, reassess, and of course, these tools so that you can put them together to reduce threat. But eventually, what happens is we get to more of a threat inoculation phase, where right now, Alicia's kind of in the middle. Things are kind of overlapped, where she's still doing a lot of threat reduction because that's what's needed. But we're starting to inoculate her with threat with more of these vertical gait cycle type drills. And so now, we're kind of purposely adding threat back in, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And, this whole process, it's there's no timeline necessarily. Like you don't necessarily know what the timeline is going to be. You just have to engage the process and work through it. And this is really on par for what I'm used to right now with this type of an issue, which it's been, since Monday. And she's doing
a week.
Yeah, it's been a week.
So
yeah.
It's been a week.
Yeah. And there's going to be more work to be done. There's no question. But this is very typical. And, we were talking the other night, and it's like, what do other people do in this scenario?
Yeah.
When this happens? Because remember back to the beginning, the severity of the pain, you can't help but think the severity of the pain equals the severity of the issue. What do people do? With a back problem like this, they go to the emergency room.
Mm.
And then who knows what that turns into? But most of the time, it's like, all right, take these painkillers and don't do anything.
Yeah, lay in bed for a week.
Yeah, just lay in bed for a week. Let's see what happens. Let's see if nothing at all can help you. And, some people, they do that and it does work for them. But other people, it turns into this really bad cycle. I can't tell you how many people I talk to on a daily basis who are like, I've had low back pain for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, the advice of like, take these pills, don't do a thing. I don't know. That doesn't seem like very good advice. Sometimes you do need painkillers. I'm not saying that. In fact, Alisha tried painkillers one night because it started interfering with her sleep.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was it kind of irritated her guts, so she bailed on that, right? So she was like, not going to add any more problems to this. But luckily, things kept moving in the right direction. You need painkillers. But what I'm saying is, the advice of don't do anything it's just not great advice, right? There's always something you can do, and that's why I want people to hear about these real life experiences, and those of our listeners and our members and stuff who are really starting to engage this process and learn about neuro. This is so important to understand, because this is the exact process that I go through anytime something comes up for my own body. And it's what I do with clients too when they're in situations like this.
Yeah, one of the big things that is striking me today is just how aggressively you guys were attacking it. Like every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
And that blows
she's doing
people's
something.
minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That blows people's mind. I think, remember we talked about my my knee injury story
Mm-hmm.
a while back, and I was like, I probably did 500 knee circles on day one.
Yeah. I'm definitely being way too ginger with my own implementations of this stuff. I'm doing it once before a workout, or if it's bothering me a little bit, I'll do some of these drills that are helping me. But sounds like you could do a lot more if you're assessing and reassessing.
Yes, right. It's not a good idea to do all these things and guess, because you just don't know what's helping and what's hindering the process. That's why assessing things is so key, because you're literally asking your nervous system, hey, nervous system, do you give this a thumbs up or a thumbs down? And even some of the most seemingly simple, gentle things could increase threat. In fact, I forgot to mention this part. So in the process of Alisha finding high payoff drills, I think maybe on like day 2 or 3, it might have been early, like day 2, she was like, I'm going to explore vision drills and see if vision drills could help. And I remember her texting me. She's like, I did pencil push-ups and near far jumps. And the reason she chose those exercises is they can be quite good for flexion-based movements. And she wanted to improve her, because she was flexion intolerant at that point. So based on knowing that, she'd go, okay, I'm going to do some near far jumps, which is like an accommodation-based exercise, uses a lot of convergence. Pencil push-ups, a lot of convergence. She did them, and she got immediately worse. Her back pain actually increased. So then she goes, oh, shoot. Okay, so vision drills aren't going to be the thing to help me here. And it was the next day that she had 2 private sessions with some clients on Zoom. So she had to sit, which was terrible, and she had to converge for 2 hours.
Yeah, stare at a screen. Yeah.
She was staring at a screen, which is the same thing as pencil push-ups and near far jumps. She was wrecked after that.
Yeah.
Wrecked. But we knew why, right? We were like, okay, the sitting we knew about, but now it makes sense because you're sensitive to visual stimulus. Now it makes sense why being in convergence could be so threatening. So luckily after that, she didn't have any privates on the calendar, so she could limit, right, the screen time. But it was interesting to find that, because how many times am I saying, Tony, vision drills are the best.
Yeah.
They're the best. And it's like, that's just not always the case. And for her, it may have been activating her sympathetics even more when she was in a very sympathetically driven state. And that's why you can't ever say vision drills are awesome for all these things.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, becoming a trend, because people are discovering this stuff, right? People are talking about neuro, they're talking about vision exercises, and you can go on Instagram and scroll and find people saying, this vision exercise is amazing for doing XYZ. It just doesn't always work like that because each person literally is so different and it's all situational. Because guess what? Pencil push-ups and near-far jumps for Alisha in a healthy state are actually good for her.
Mm-hmm.
That's why another reason why she was like, all right, I'm going to try this. But it didn't go the way she wanted to.
Yeah.
So she had to move on to different things.
And you've got to listen to that. You can't
gotta listen to that.
If stretching is hurting you more, don't just keep stretching. If
Seriously.
vision drills are making it worse, don't just keep doing vision drills because someone said
exactly
this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it goes back to, you know, how difficult it is for me to have these conversations with people that I really don't know when they message me and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Hey, what should I do for this issue?" And I always say the same thing. You have to go watch my free masterclass because I literally take you step by step through this whole thing so that you can understand what the nervous system is, how it responds, how we can test it to know our response to exercise, and what an input actually is. All that stuff's covered in the masterclass because without that foundation, what are you doing? You're like,
you're
okay,
blind.
I'll just try this exercise and then what? Like the assess reassess is so special for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it gives you validation about it and it helps your compliancy to do it. Because when I do an exercise, if I'm not testing it, if I don't know that it's helping me, it's hard to be motivated to even do it. So there's like a motivation factor that comes from it too. Like if I do these drills, I know I'm getting something from it. And a lot of times people do 6 weeks of PT, 12 weeks of PT, whatever the case, and they never had that confidence that this thing was helping them. Right? They didn't know because it may not have been assessed. So it's so key.
This has been great. I'm really glad that she's seeing a lot of forward momentum, that things are getting better. We should definitely touch base on this maybe next episode or two.
That'd be
just
awesome.
Kind of see how she's doing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome because now it's time for her to kind of get a little bit more into training.
Yeah.
You know, and not lean so heavily on the threat reduction.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
All right, there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Listen, if you want to get more into this and this process that I described was really interesting to you, like I said before, the free masterclass, that's where you have to go. So you can find the free neuro masterclass using the link in the show notes here. You can also find it in our bio on Instagram or even over on YouTube. But make sure you watch that because that's really going to help you understand some of the language that we used in this episode if you're new here. And those of you who aren't, I hope this kind of helped paint the picture of how we actually put this into action with that threat reduction phase, leading us right into that threat inoculation. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back soon.